Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
I'm Jim Check. You're watching Now Media. With me, George Sanders, President and CEO of Gold Cliff Resource Corporation. I know George for a long time. Welcome all the way down there in sunny Mexico.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Happy to be here.
We're going to talk about the state of mining, and you and your family, your background, you've been in mining in British Columbia forever. Maybe just give people like kind of a bit of a background, your family background, and in mining in general here in British Columbia.
Sure. My maternal grandfather arrived in the Trout Lake district in the Kootenays of British Columbia in 1910, and he was a man of that era, a jack of all trades. He was a trapper, hunter, logger, and really dear to his heart, he was a prospector. Fast forward several decades, my mother's born and raised there, and a young geologic engineer from Ontario happens to come through BC and wants to review some of the properties held by this prospector. So that's how my mom and dad met, and that's my roots in the business. Shortly after I was born, in the same district in a little town called Camborne, my father was mine geologist at the Spider Mine, which was a small but high-grade lead zinc silver producer. And my sister, next in the family after me, who was born in Revelstoke, there's no hospitals in Camborne, it came home in that environment. So we have deep roots with mineral exploration, some production in the province. It goes back a long ways, more than one generation.
And you're currently the president and CEO of Gold Cliff Resource Corporation, but you've been a mining analyst at Canaccord as well.
The predecessor company to Canaccord, called Canarim. Yes, I was an analyst specializing in junior companies right up through the producers in the early 1980s.
And then also you've sat on many boards. You were also part of the Shore Gold operation, I think vice president at Shore Gold. Was that correct there? The diamond mining thing, Shore Gold?
That was a diamond development, not mining project in Saskatchewan. But more on the mining side, I was one of the founding members of the founding group of a company called Silvercrest Mines. And there were two versions of that. There was an initial mine that we put in production in northern Mexico, and then we spun out an exploration asset to create Silvercrest Metals. And both of those companies ended up being taken from essentially exploration stage right through to very profitable production, and ended out in successful buyouts by larger mining companies. And that was a great experience at the board level because not only the technical aspects of advancing an exploration program, but when you get into mining, that's a whole different ballgame. And so it enabled me to have firsthand experience on some of the issues with that, around permitting, around community affairs, around health and safety, and those sorts of issues. So really great experience, and both of those companies were taken out at a big win for shareholders. So we were proud of that as well.
And then you and I have been friends for a long time, and also we started a podcast prior to COVID there, Canadian Market Watch, and we interviewed some of the big deals in Canada in mining, including Clive Beddoes, is it? Clive Beddoes from B2 Gold?
No, Clive
Johnson. Clive Johnson, right. And then Eric, his last name?
Eric Fear.
beer from Silvercrest and a couple other guys. I can't remember all the names now. That was a while back. And then during COVID, we kind of let that slide. And then you and I have also been kind of just talking about mining and gold and resource stocks for, oh God, be like 25 years. You and I have kind of known each other. And we've gone from like a boom cycle to a bust, and it's been a long, long bust, right? I mean, it's been a long, long bust in the bust cycle. And then right now, I mean, the metal prices would make this like, the day we've been waiting for, right? I mean, you're seeing copper at record levels, silver like blew through. Like I never thought I'd see 100 plus silver prices, and then gold obviously at record levels as well. Almost all the metals are banging on the door at record levels. Even nickel at $8 and stuff like that. This is kind of like the day we've been waiting for. But I guess the bad part is that the exploration companies have kind of been starved out a little bit, like, because because the cycle is guys like yourself right now, you're running an exploration company, Gold Cliff Resource Company Corporation, and then you go to like delineating and deposit, and then hopefully kind of like developing and then getting bought out. But like not much of the financing is shown up there for the what has it been now, like that dry spot?
For sure, it's been 2.5 years. It's actually been a fair bit longer than that. So it's been a protracted bear market for the exploration companies and to a degree for the production companies. And I didn't agree to come on here to plug our own company or anything that we do, but just because of the question, we do have a Gold Cliff YouTube channel, and we do have a new video today, and we're talking about this very thing, Jim, where the junior market has been and where it looks like it's going in terms of the ability to attract new investors and, more importantly, investment capital. So it's been a long haul. In 2025, most every mining stock, and when I say mining stock, I don't mean exploration and I don't mean development, I mean the producing mining companies, those stocks have all done really, really well. And it's only in the last quarter of the year that finally there's a bid come into the more speculative range of the whole mining business, which is the exploration, both early stage and advanced, and the development stage. So we did see a very marked improvement in trading volume, and as a result of that, financing from August until about mid-October. And when metal prices had their first correction in mid-October, we saw that decline for about a month and then pick up again in mid-December and just take off in January. So finally, to the generative part of the mining business, which is the investigation of the potential for new mineral deposits and then the work to actually discover those deposits, finally some funding is coming into that segment of the space, and those of us who are participants in that segment are really happy.
Yeah, because I mean, that longer bear market is kind of like choked off many that come. Some of them just died on the vine, right? That they couldn't get financing and they just died out. So I guess the ones that survive now, perhaps like if the sun is starting to shine, that it'll be the survival of the strongest, and perhaps some of that money will start to flow into exploration companies. And will some of that come like even from like there is a miner here in BC right now, or an exploration company, American Eagle, which has got some I guess investment from majors too, like Teck has bought a piece into that their property and stuff like that. Is that kind of the hope in some of the smaller companies too, to get some help from some of the majors?
Folks, this is unrehearsed.
Yeah, this is all just off the cuff.
This is off the cuff, and honestly, we that's one of the points that we make in this recent video. we noticed this, and American Eagle was one of the companies, but it wasn't the only one. We noticed this about 18 months ago. And the majors or the bigger operating mining companies have always been a source of funding for juniors. But typically those are structured as joint venture arrangements or options to purchase or something like that. It's very seldom in the past that the bigger mining company will make a direct equity investment by purchasing shares out of the treasury of a junior company. That happened in the case of American Eagle, and it happened in the case of a few other companies. Again, not plugging what we're doing, but we did talk about that over a year and a half ago, and we said, hey, you know, this is starting to show up in our business, and this is a little bit unusual for those of us that have been in the business for a few decades. We haven't really seen this before. If this continues, that's a really good trend, or it will become a trend, and it's something very positive. Well, fast forward to today, it did continue. There's a lot of merger and acquisition activity in the space. There's a fair bit of that M&A activity that's around the junior or the exploration part of the space. And the larger mining companies are still taking equity positions in juniors. And that does two really, really important things for the space. The first thing it does is it validates that this space is not operated strictly by scoundrels and cheats and windbags. It validates that there are really good technical people in the junior end of the business, and there are some really good projects. So it gives a credibility level. And the second thing it does is it presents realistic valuation thresholds. So if an actual miner pays X dollars for an asset, that deal can be extrapolated to say that's what this asset is worth to a real mining company at this stage of development. And from that threshold, we can kind of back calculate, if you will, what comparable projects might be worth at an earlier stage. And what that does is it gives some realistic credibility to potential valuations instead of them just coming out of the mouth of a promoter who says, yeah, our stock should be worth, you know, $700 million. Well, we now have these comparables set by real miners, and we can fit those ideas into those benchmarks. And I think that's really important, and I think that both of those factors provide us with maybe a pretty good runway for financing further exploration and then the development of things that have already been found over the next 12 to 18 months.
So the question I really wanted to ask today was the state of mining in British Columbia. I mean, that's where you have property, but you also have properties in Nevada, right? Gold Cliff has properties here in British Columbia. And I believe from my memory, you have a silver property in Ainsworth. You have a gold discovery property in Kettle River area there. And then also you have some properties in Nevada, gold properties in Nevada.
We have 3 properties in BC, all within decent vicinity of Kelowna. We have, and our team started as the group in the middle 1980s that developed the open pit mine at Headley, BC on top of the historic mine workings. So that's the background of Gold Cliff, and we have a property there called Panorama Ridge, which we've had since the year 2000, and it's had the most work done on it, and we've dusted that off the shelf in light of higher metal prices. We have a silver property in Ainsworth and the Kettle Valley property, which is an hour and 40-minute drive from Kelowna on Highway 33. So 3 properties in the province, all active this past fall, and all plans to be active on all of them this coming year or this current year. And we have 2 assets in Nevada. Both of those are currently on care and maintenance simply because of the differential between the Canadian dollar and the US dollar. So we raise our money in Canada, but spending it in the United States, you're taking about a 35 to 40% haircut right off the bat. So, but things in British Columbia are finally looking up.
So what's I know in the past we've talked, and then like sometimes just to get drill permits and stuff like that have been slow to go. Has that improved in British Columbia? Are we seeing faster turnarounds when you apply to get drill permits and the regulatory bodies? Is that more conducive now to mining in BC for exploring?
Okay, we've not seen any on the ground improvement as an industry. On the projects that we've been working on and the permitting thereof, we've really had very few issues. So the system has worked fine, albeit these are programs in cut blocks, they're smaller programs, there's no major upfront hurdle, there's no salmon spawning streams or things like that. So our own experience has been you do have to wait. You have to wait a while, but it hasn't been an issue. That's not the same for everybody. However, I guess it's 2 weeks ago now at the Roundup Conference, which is the AIM-BC annual gathering. I think 8,000 people were at that this year. The Premier made a very dramatic announcement, and he said that we were going to really go full bore and try and speed up the permitting process for exploration companies. And he proposed a time frame of 40 to 140 days. And I can tell you on a simple project, a 40 to 50 day turnaround on a permit would be absolutely fantastic and would be welcome. So the industry is pretty excited. Now, I started my answer by saying nothing's changed. That announcement was only made in the last 2 weeks, so one should not reasonably expect it to filter down and be implemented into the bureaucracy yet. But it is coming. It's a positive sign. The skeptic in me would say, let's see how the words out of the politician's mouth, how they actually make their way to the on-the-ground decision making. And often there's a disconnect between that. But I think, regardless of political stripe, I think politicians around the world have recognized that mineral development and mineral production is in fact a national security issue. And as much as we want to say we're for this and we're for that, we really don't make an improvement unless we streamline and accelerate the permitting process. So Gold Cliff certainly welcomes that change in attitude, if you will, and I know that the entire industry does. And to the political side of the commentary, it does indicate that the government has been listening to the exploration and mining advocacy groups like AIM-BC, who have been presenting the permit issue for a couple of years now. So it looks like the government's listening. It looks like there's regulatory change in place, and we certainly welcome that, and we certainly applaud that. And very long-winded answer, but just to finish it off, that also confers a responsibility on the behalf of the explorer, on behalf of the Gold Cliffs, of the business. We have to submit to the government reasonable documents, well documented for reasonable projects in reasonable timeframes. And so sometimes the permit delays have been because the applicant did, frankly, a poor job in putting the application together. So there is a responsibility on industry to do that. But I can tell you, most of the industry figured that out a few years ago and is doing a much better job in presenting, how to say it, more thorough permit applications.
Let's face the fact that economics is the big thing, though, right? Like, I mean, I was a mine site controller at one time. It's all about economics, right? Like, you shut down mines when the price of nickel falls and the price of silver falls. And you were looking at these deposits when silver was $20, and you were looking at them as being, feasible. Silver at 70, 80, 90, 100. I mean, that's got to make you want to fast track anything, right? Because I mean, obviously your cutoff grades drop and all kinds of things become a lot more lucrative as the price of metal soars. And I'm not sure where you thought silver would end up, but silver over $100 an ounce just the last little while here. I mean, it's I think around 75 US today, but the economics have to make it seem very enticing right now.
In a previous cycle, not so long ago, so not back in the 1980s, the price of silver divided into as a percent of the price of gold. So not the gold-silver ratio, but as a percent of the gold price reached 6. It's currently somewhere around 1.3 or 4, and it's up from below 1 very, very recently. So if the price of gold were to go to $7,000 or $8,000 and that ratio was to be achieved again, we could be looking at silver prices as high as $300 US an ounce. So not saying that's going to happen, but some pretty smart people have put that analysis together. It's very interesting. Where we're operating primarily for silver is in the historic Ainsworth camp, just south of Kaslo, and people will know it for the famous hot springs there. And we're operating in an area where some extremely high grade was mined in the early 1900s. And our work there over a couple of field seasons has led us to believe that we understand some of the keys to the mineral deposition there. And so we have applied for a permit to do some trenching and some drilling there, hopefully this spring and summer, looking for more of this high grade. Our approach to that particular project, coming back to your comment on price and on the high grades there, is to look at a direct shipping or custom milling operation. And so should we locate a concentration of high-grade mineralization, even a small amount, at these prices it could be very profitable to extract that and then ship it to an existing mill that already has permits and waste management in place and have it processed there. Now, that is a more expensive operating cost proposition, but it's a less expensive capital cost proposition because the operator would not be constructing a new mill, would not be going through all of the studies and the permitting and the time to construct a new mill. There would be no tailings pond. So you take all of that off the table, and because of these metal prices, you can come down the grade threshold of what might be profitable. And so we're excited to get after that opportunity. And we're not alone in pursuing that model. And in fact, there's a well-known medium to high grade, little deposit up in Smithers. I've looked at it several times over the decades, and hats off to the group that have it. They pushed it through, and they are doing that same thing. They developed the mine, but they didn't try and permit the process facility. They are shipping that ore all the way from Smithers for processing at Merritt. And so far, at these prices, that's looking like a really strong project. And,
Yeah,
you
because
know, to that, you're adding new jobs, high paying jobs, you're adding profitability that gets reinvested in, if not on that property, on other properties. So there's a circular nature to the profitability. It doesn't all go into the shareholders' pockets.
so the timeline for doing that, I imagine that's like a couple of years then, because you got to drill a few holes, and then I guess
At more than a few holes, and yeah, that would be a. But there is in place already, has been for a couple of decades, a small mine permit. So when you're going to extract less than 75,000 tons of ore per year, there's a different level of permitting that's a little more streamlined for the smaller operator. That already exists.
versus doing a full mine yourself, because I was part of a build. I mean, that you got environmental assessments, you got feasibility studies, you got all these different building and tailings pond. I mean, from an exploration hole to an operating mine, fully commissioned, what is that typically, like 20 years?
Depends on the jurisdiction. I've always said between 12 and 18. So, yeah, it's a long time. And interestingly, uh, in the early 1980s was the famous Hemlo discovery in Ontario. That project went from first discovery hole. Now, they didn't hit the discovery hole till like number 78 or 79. So they had been drilling already for a season. But from the first really good drill intercept to the first pour of gold only took 4 years. That would be impossible in today's regulatory environment, not only from a permitting point of view, but from a securities and financing point of view, with all of the way that that's done these days. In my own experience, the discovery drill hole on the Santa Elena project in Mexico for Silvercrest Mines, until the first ore was put on the heap leach pad, was only 4 years.
Wow.
And you could not duplicate that again in Mexico, or certainly anywhere else in the northern or southern hemisphere.
Is Great Bear, because that was one of the Canadian success stories recently, Great Bear Resources? Like, how long was that one pouring yet, or where's that one at? The one Kinross took out?
No, Kinross is still developing, and I don't know the current where they are with that, but I know they're well advanced in their planning for that. And if anybody recognizes that name or is interested in it, certainly you dig up the management discussion and analysis document from Kinross, and you'll find all the disclosure in there. Interestingly, about regulatory and the securities part of regulatory requirements, that project was taken over before the people at Great Bear ever advanced it to a initial resource calculation, or following that to a preliminary economic assessment or a pre-feasibility study. So those documents aren't necessarily required. If the bigger mining company likes your database, they have the ability to do all of that stuff in-house really quickly, at least to the point of making their investment decision in that company.
I imagine AI is going to play a bigger role in it's looking at the data, because it really is a ton of data, right? That's why you got to drill so many holes and delineate the deposit and that. But I imagine AI is going to really kind of like, I guess, maybe fast track some of that decision making, or maybe even tell you where to put the next hole and all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely, and I know right now because in-house we're working on this, uh, or we're about to work on a project with AI. AI can do a resource calculation probably quicker uh, than the engineering firm. Now, where the rubber's going to meet the road is how will that be treated from a regulatory point of view and from a corporate disclosure within a regulatory point of view. And the answer to that is nobody knows right now. And trust me, the securities lawyers are going through all of this stuff that AI presents us with. So fabulous opportunities, but also we don't know how it's going to shake out from a regulatory point of view with respect to a resource calculation. There was an announcement yesterday by the large intermediate producer Equinox, and they reported some new drill intercepts from a new zone, brand new, at their Valentine mine in Newfoundland. And I don't know the details of how they integrated AI, but definitely AI assisted in the generation of that exploration, which resulted in a new discovery. Which, reading the company's news release, they honestly believe that they can turn it into a satellite deposit, satellite ore body, and of course the down the road impacts of that for that company's shareholders is that mine lives get extended, operations get extended, cash flow gets extended. So it's all an exciting time. A lot of old school people still in the business aren't sold on AI. You probably won't be surprised to know that a number of us gray hairs who are in the business are completely blown away by the capabilities of, shall I call it, huge computational power, and that's not going to go away. And my only question about it is on a corporate disclosure and regulatory.
Yeah, I imagine because there's so many things that go into mining between airborne mag studies, all that kind of stuff, all the drill, all that historical data. If you get that all into a model, I imagine, like some of those historical data goes back into the early 1900s and all the airborne stuff too. It lends to faster discovery and I guess some more successful initial drill holes too.
I'll tell you a real world example. On our Ainsworth project, I spent half an hour, 45 minutes, really carefully refining my prompts. And I asked ChatGPT to review all of the historical Ainsworth District assessment reports, old government reports, corporate promotional material in the BC mining database. I asked them to review all the technical papers written by academic geoscientists on the Kootenay Arc and on the district. I asked them to review all the work that we've disclosed. And I think the response came back, and then I gave them that as parameters, and I asked them to generate for us what that data would tell about the best locations to find new ore. 30 seconds later, I got back an incredibly long and detailed analysis. I circulated it to our technical team, and they were blown away by it. Now, part of the reason for their enthusiasm was we had already come to those same conclusions, and so it validated our own thinking. So we were pretty excited about that. But that's amazing. That's amazing. And all of that review of all of that information which would take a couple of serious consultants, maybe a month of work to do, that was done in 30 seconds.
I remember back in the heydays when we all sat around waiting for the next set of drill results, and many a Canadian company were built on drill results, and many failed on drill results as well. But you know, like the Voisey Bay discovery, which was one of the big discoveries here in Canada. There's many of them, and you know, hopefully that sun shines here in Canada and the metal prices stay high. So miners like yourself, exploration companies, and if you want to find out more about George's company, it's GCN. That's the symbol on the TSX Venture, I believe. And you know, there's a lot of exploration companies that, you know, it used to be the what we compared to the .coms, the AI kind of companies. Mining used to be the thing, right? Everything used to be about what discoveries, right? Like, I mean, the big drill results, and a lot of people made a lot of money. Dimet here in Kelowna, Dimet, right? The Chuck Fipke with that diamond exploration company discovered that up in the territories there.
Absolutely. When I came into this business in 1978, the TSX Venture was called then the Vancouver Stock Exchange. There was another exchange in Calgary, and there was an exchange in Montreal. And the Vancouver Exchange was dominated by resource issuers. Now, on any given day in the last several months, the leading traders will all be resource issuers, but the entire composition of the index is less so resource issuers. So there are all sorts of fintech, clean tech, crypto related. There was a big cannabis craze for a while, which, no pun, well, pun intended, went up in smoke. But there are a number of other business sectors, and you know, it's really no different from what you see in Silicon Valley, except the structure in the United States and in parts of Europe is privately financed venture capital. In Canada, because of resources, and this is going back to the early 1900s, you know, the discoveries, the gold discoveries in Timmins built Maple Leaf Gardens, for goodness sake. Like it's part of the fabric of Canadian society. The speculative financial mechanisms from a regulatory point of view, from a legal and accounting point of view, from an engineering point of view, that infrastructure has been in place in our country for 100 years. And so we have in Canada many more startups that go to public markets earlier because we have developed that venture capital public market, which was killed long time ago in the United States. And I'm a champion of that because it works. I've seen it work. I've seen it work for founders. I've seen it work for seed investors, and I've seen it work for the follow-on investors, both retail individuals and institutions.
You're doing a series of videos, and that's you've been trying to share, and that's part of why we started doing Canadian Market Watch with Goldcliff there. You're actually kind of doing like a videos that kind of share kind of like the story, or kind of like the path to, in your exploration, you're kind of coming on and explaining how the mining cycle works as well.
So it's a fabulous tool, and any company that's trying to raise awareness with investors and secure financing would really be remiss not to use all of the technology that's available to us. I happen to like video. I consume a lot of it, and it's working for us. It's working for other issuers, and it is a way to take a disclosure document like your quarterly MD&As and financial statements and your required news releases. It's a way to take that information and present it to prospective investors, present it to your shareholders, and to do so in a manner that gives them an idea of, well, why are we even doing this? What's the long-term goal? Where are we going? How does this all fit into a business plan? All of those kinds of things you don't really see in a news release. And to put them into a news release, you'd have a 6 or 7 pager, which no one would read anyway. So it's a really effective tool. It's a way to communicate beyond just the written word. It's a way to give your investors and shareholders a perspective of, who you are, who your team is, what gets you up in the morning, what keeps you going when the times are tough. And believe me, we've communicated a lot of that, because trying to stay in business in the last several years was a serious challenge. But we think we've come out the other end. And but this is a great way to actually save folks money. When I say save folks, the investors in the company. You can communicate without paying people exorbitant fees, whether you're doing that on YouTube or through an Instagram channel or a TikTok or something like that. All of these are really, really effective, and I think the investors have a level of sophistication that enables them to sort through who's just promoting and who's actually presenting a reasonable proposition.
Well, I'm going to have one final question for you. I don't want to keep you all day because I know you're down there enjoying the sunny Mexico while we suffer up here in Canada with our last bits of winter, although it's been fairly nice here in Kelowna for winter. What do you see for British Columbia? What do you see for, like, if you're looking out towards British Columbia the next year or two, for the mining community itself?
A lot of money has been raised for the Golden Triangle. A lot of money, and in that jurisdiction in northeastern British Columbia, in and around the town of Stewart. It's bigger than that, but we have operating mines. We have majors with investments. We have majors operating mines there. A lot of money's been raised by explorers and developers there. So that money's going to get spent over time. And we already have ample evidence in that area of the province alone where the new money getting spent is finding legitimately new, really high potential new deposits. There's a lot of money been raised throughout what we're calling the Quesnel Trough, which is the porphyry copper district that runs from, way past Prince George, all the way up, hosts all the big copper mines in British Columbia. Copper's, I don't know exactly what it is today in Canadian dollars, but if it's not $7 a pound, it's pretty close. A lot of those copper mines have gold and silver credits, so we know what those are doing. So the profitability of those operations is really, really strong. With this, we're told, shortening of the permitting process for exploration companies. I think British Columbia is a really, really exciting jurisdiction. And in light of these new metal prices, where you can look at maybe things that weren't profitable 2 years ago that could be profitable in today's environment, I think that opens up everything. And I think we've seen that the industry has learned how to communicate with First Nations. And I think a number of the First Nations have been very proactive. Instead of just saying, no, we don't want any mining here, they're saying, okay, well, how do we work together with these guys and for the benefit of everybody? How do we bring new jobs and new money into these communities? So I think that that's a direction that the province is heading in, and I think it's really, really bullish. It's long overdue, and we're excited to be part of it.
I know that the operation that I worked at as a mine site controller, we employed quite a few people from the local community. That was part of our commitment to that First Nations group that was there, and we trained because it was underground mine. So there's obviously a lot of training that goes into underground. Good money too in underground mining, and but a lot of training and safety that goes into it as well. And yeah, hopefully these metal prices are very encouraging, especially for a couple of guys like you and I that have been following this sector forever. And I mean, the sun is shining, and now hopefully that like the regulatory environment recognizes that the sun is shining and that there's no time to be wasted. We need to get some shovels in the ground. Shovel ready is one thing. Shovels in the ground is another thing, right? Like
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For people that think that, well, this was just a speculative blow off or something like that, there's a reason why metal prices are in the process of going to different pricing thresholds, and there's a reason why they've been grinding higher over the last 18 months. And like everything in economics, you boil it down to supply and demand. And we've lived in a world, a globalized world, where we haven't wanted new resources in our own backyard. So we're happy to get those resources from other countries, other jurisdictions. And now the world is deglobalizing a little, and the macro political landscape is changing, and individual company security of these metals is becoming more and more important. And I think people realize that, and they realize the huge demand that massive computational power is bringing to the demand for these metals, and it's not going away. And in fact, we may reach some points where there's a bottleneck, because you can only develop an ore body so fast. You can build a data center and start using that computational power a lot quicker than you can build a new mine to supply the copper and the nickel and the silver that goes into all that technology.
Yeah, AI is the big race. I mean, it is probably the biggest thing that's happened since the discovery of electricity. And she's a hungry beast, and she wants all the metals, and she wants all the energy. Well, she wants energy, and it takes the metals to kind of facilitate all that energy as well. And then the space race is on, and the Americans too, for a moon base and a Mars landing. All these things, all are going to drive the energy sector, and silver and gold are some of the best conductors out there as well for energy.
Jim, do you have one more? Do you have more
Yeah,
time
shoot.
for one
Yeah.
thought on that?
Yeah. Shoot.
So that's not going away. That's in fact accelerating, and don't really want to make predictions, but I wouldn't be surprised in the next 18 months, and this is more so for the developers than for the exploration companies, but I wouldn't be surprised to see mega AI firms, and we all know who those are, to start making direct investments into mineral development companies by way of equity and by way of offtake agreements to secure the supply of those minerals.
We've already seen it. Tesla's refining its own lithium.
It's starting, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that as a trend.
No. To secure the supply lines, and they've seen that. We've seen that with what's happened with the Russia-Ukraine war. We've seen that with what's happened with the Chinese, like restrictions on critical minerals and all that kind of stuff. I think this AI race is paramount for everybody. I mean, it's not a race they want to lose, because I think it means so much. And with that, they need to secure their critical minerals for that.
Absolutely.
I do thank you, George. It's always informative. It's great. And glad you're enjoying Mexico. And we had a great show in the past, the Canadian Market Watch, and I know we let it go in COVID. COVID killed it. But we'll check in every now and then, because you do know mining. I mean, it's one thing you do know. It's all about mining. And if you're interested in George's company and the videos that he's creating, you can go on any stock watch, Yahoo or whatever, and put in the symbol GCN, and you'll find Gold Cliff Resource Corporation there, and then you'll find all the press releases, then you go find the website, and then you're going to find all the videos. And then George is quick to respond as well if you have any questions for that. And just, he has a wealth of knowledge in the mining sector. And I know, and just in disclosure, I do myself own some American Eagle, and I do own some Gold Cliff as well. And I've been an investor in the resource sector for a long time, and it had some mining, uranium stocks, big believer in uranium as well. And also, and I also have in my portfolio lots of dead stocks as well, right? You and I have a lot of wallpaper as well. Some of them have done quite well.
Don't remind me.
All right, thank you, George, and thank you for watching Now Media.
Hey,
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.